The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life.
Hello, friends. Welcome to this week's episode of the Remarkable People Podcast, the Prithvi Madhukar story. This week, Prit talks about how she was moved to Singapore with her family as a child and was subject to discrimination and bias. Then she moves back to her own country of India, and she's subject to bias and discrimination. And then she decides she doesn't want to be an engineer or physician like most of her peers. So she comes to America to pursue an MBA to find her passion. This week, we talk about finding confidence, finding your passion, fulfilling it. We talk about overcoming anxiety and depression, and so much more in Prit's story. She's a successful marketing executive. She's an author. So get your pen and paper ready, unless you're driving. Be ready to take notes. And more than anything, listen to the whole episode. Be inspired. Reach out to Prit or myself if you need help. And then, like our slogan says, don't just listen to great content, but do it, repeat it, so you can have a great life in this world and an eternity to come. So I'm David Pasqualone. You're about to listen to Prithvi Madhukar. Let's do this. Hey, Prit, how are you today?
Hi, David. I'm doing super, super awesome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm excited for our episode. I just shared with our listeners all about you and what they can expect. But like our listeners know, there's a whole lot more. That was just a summary of a partial of this episode. So at this time, let's just dig into your story. What we'll do is start with from where you were born and what was your upbringing like, and bring us through chronologically your life to today, because everything that happens in the past makes us the human we are, right? So we want to get a feel for what methods and ways and life and circumstances did God use to make you who you are today. And then along the way, we'll stop and we'll pause and we'll say, okay, you achieved this or you overcame that. How did you do it in practical steps so our listeners can too? Sound good?
Sounds amazing. I've got so much to share with your audience today. I'm quite excited.
Well, let's do it. So where were you born?
So I was born in India, in Bangalore. It's in the southern part of India. So when I was about 6 months old, my parents moved to Singapore for work. So I actually grew up in Singapore. I was there till I was about 12 years old. And my time in Singapore is probably one of the most memorable memories that I have. My childhood there, it's just a very different atmosphere. Growing up and the person that I am today, there's a lot of influences from Singapore that I can personally see. And so growing up in Singapore, it was really different. It was, I was an Indian, so definitely was in the minority. And growing up, there were a lot of things that I had to personally overcome as well in terms of my mindset. Given that I was in the minority, at some places there have been like racial discrimination that I have faced as a kid, even while growing up. I think it was definitely a process for me to accept, the color of my skin, the race that I come from, the religion that I, was adhering at that point in time. And I think that, the journey of accepting who I am today began right from there, accepting how I looked, whether it was different from the people around me or whether it was the practices that I had as an Indian, all of those things started from that age. And I think that triggered a lot of introspection in me. I think that my introspection started from that age. So that's where it began. So learning how to accept who I was. started from a very young age. And then came,
Actually, let me ask
growing
you,
up.
before you go
Sure.
on, Prit, let me ask you a question. So we're in America and we have listeners, we've had listeners over 100 countries, but actively every week, it's over, I think it's like 60 countries actively dig into the podcast. When you're talking about bias and bigotry, every country has it, always
Yes,
has,
absolutely.
always will. People who say it's wrong, they're right. But the fact is, it's just that way.
It
People
is.
are biased. Okay.
It is.
So when you're talking about the discrimination that you faced growing up, to what severity level was it? Was it to the point where you're getting physically assaulted? Were you getting picked on verbally? Was it where they're making you feel less than and you're like, I'm not good enough because of what some idiot's saying? Like, what was the degree? Because, like, if I said the word church, the denotation that's in the dictionary is it describes what a church is, right? But the connotation, the emotional feel that you feel, I feel, and every listener feels based on their
Is different.
background. Exactly. So that's why I
Perfect.
want you to
Yes.
really dig into the discrimination you faced growing up so people get a
Yes.
feel for where you're at.
All right. So one of the things that you have to understand about Singapore as a country is they are pretty strict on, you know, their rules on racial discrimination. They completely, they don't want racial discrimination because the entire country is built on racial harmony. There are different races that want to live together. So while I was growing up, being in an environment in my school, as much as possible, the teachers did try to protect the people, some of us who were different from the rest. However, I do have to add that there have been different degrees of racial discrimination that I have faced. One, it starts off verbally, where people tell you, well, you look funny, or your food smells funny, or, you smell funny, and then why are you so dark? Why you look so ugly based on the way your skin is? All of those things. Their perception of beauty is very distorted because they have a very different thought process on what beauty looks like to them. So it starts off
It's
there, and
and
then
some of them are just jealous. I mean, some people are just flat out jealous. Like, I love the color of your skin and I'm pale white. I hate you. I mean, people are that shallow. It really is true.
yeah, so it starts off there, and it starts off with subtle things that you probably won't even realize, and you start to become conscious. And then there have been instances where it has reached to a physical point where I had been. So I remember, I think I was in third grade at this point, and this kid in my class, he flicked ink on my face because he said he didn't like the color of my skin, and that was a physical assault. I mean, I wouldn't say assault because I think that it's a very strong word, but there was a little bit of an altercation, I guess I would say. And even when I brought it to my teacher's attention, of course she was shocked. She didn't know how to handle the situation, but I think she did it the best way that she could. She made the boy apologize, but at the same time, after she left, it was back to square one with the verbal abusing. So while the physical abuse was looked down upon, the verbal abuse continued after that. And even when I would tell my teachers about this, they would say, well, don't pay attention, or, don't heed to that. But no one would ever talk to them about not speaking that way, and I think that those were little things that I picked up while growing up. And for some reason, I started thinking that it was on me to think differently about the situation. Because, in my opinion, at that point, they were probably never going to change their opinion of me. But I had control over the situation. I had control over my thought process, what I thought was beautiful, what I perceived to be amazing or okay for me to believe in. So I think that's when it triggered my whole introspection, like the whole process of self-introspection.
All right. So now where from there do you go? Like, so you're getting introspect, you're trying to discern, if I'm hearing you correctly, okay, what's really me and what's really them? Like, have I done anything wrong or is it them? So you're trying to pick out the differences between what society's saying, what individuals are saying, and what you know in your heart. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So it started from there. And then when I came back to India when I was like 12 years old, I actually thought I would not be facing racial discrimination anymore because, well, I was among Indians, right? So I thought, okay, well,
In the
because I'm
caste system, I mean, surely there's no discrimination.
absolutely, because I was 12 years old at that point, and I'm like, okay, what is going on? This is a whole different dynamic, you know. Now it was based on the shades of brown. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous at what people perceived beauty was. And the fairer your skin is, the more beautiful you were. And even all the marketing for all these beauty products were all inclined towards insinuating that if you were fair skinned, then you were beautiful. And so it became another battle of me trying to accept that, well, this is my color. I can't really do anything about it. So maybe I should change my perception of what I think is beauty. So the person I'm looking at in the mirror, well, she's beautiful to me, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. And I think that entire phase, it was a brutal 3 to 4 years of the people who I thought were my friends picking on me because of the color of my skin, because they didn't think that I adhered to the norms of beauty. And that self-acceptance, I think that in a lot of ways has kind of translated into me being this confident. Like, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a podcaster, I show up on videos. And to me today, it doesn't matter what someone else thinks about how I look, because my self-acceptance is so strong, and it was built with such a strong foundation from when I was like a teenager.
So social media and the technology we have really helped you out in your generation. Because even if you go back one generation, they didn't have the YouTube and the social media apps like, right now Twitter, because Elon Musk is huge in the news, and Facebook and TikTok. So that really helped you become, it was a good thing for you in your life and in probably your friends' lives, correct?
I guess I would say more than social media, I think the internet, because, well, we're still talking about like the early 2000s at this point. So social media, I mean, it only became, I think Facebook was only around from 2004. But I think before that, it was like the internet. There were articles, there were conversations that people were having about beauty. And I honestly, there are so many people, so many articles, news or paper articles that were talking about self-acceptance, self-love, accepting who you are. And there were a lot of debates and conversations about how there were so many companies that were aligning their marketing to only promote fair skin. And even, there was a lot of debates that were sparked when it came to the society talking about color, talking about beauty, talking about their perception of what was beautiful and what was not. So I think as a generation, we have done pretty well in terms of absorbing the information around us and, forming our own opinion instead of relying on what the previous generation were thinking and just blindly accepting that. I think that the generation that I belong to questioned a lot of things, and that also contributed to where my thought process led me to.
Yes. And I don't want to distract from your story. I
Yes.
want to stick
Sure.
to your story, Prit's story. But something you just said is so powerful. And I don't know if the listeners and you picked up on it, but what helped you is also a massive two-edged sword, because the internet helped you to see things from a different perspective. But now in this generation, the internet is so biased through social media, through the cancel
Yes.
culture, through censoring, through fact checkers. So now where you were, 20 years ago, able to go online and get various different opinions that gave you a balanced approach to life. Now people are looking at this with the impression it's balanced, and it's really left wing. You know what I mean? It's really,
Yes.
it is. It's very liberal. It's very one-sided. And now, like, again, I made the joke about Elon Musk. He's trying to equal the playing field here. So he's just going to buy the whole damn company. Right. So I don't want to get off into that debate because that's not what we're here for. But definitely it triggers that. So with your generation, 20 years ago, finding truth on the internet, what do you think if you're talking? Here's our first talking point. There's young women and men all over the world listening to you right now, and they're feeling this pressure, the bias. They don't fit in when they're like, wait, there's nothing wrong with me, but they're being told there is. Do you think social media is a good place for them to go now?
Well, I think that there is no right answer to that question because it depends on where you go on social media as well. Because there have been fantastic influencers, fantastic famous people talking about real life incidents that have shaped them to who they are today. I mean, people listening to this podcast will know that I have faced bias and will understand my approach to life and how that has shaped me in a positive way. However, you are going to have conversations on one side of social media where it is going to be extremely biased. It is going to be very negative. It is going to, I think it would influence you in a very negative way. So I think it really depends on where you are going to form your opinions.
Mhm.
And I think that it also depends on you as a person to have that, I guess, that discernment that, okay, well, I follow this person because of their values, because of their ideals. And, I agree or I disagree to the conversations that they are having. I think it all boils down because I've seen really, really good conversations that have opened my eyes. And I have also, on the other hand, seen conversations on social media where I've been like, nope, this does not align with me at all. So I guess there is no right answer.
Yeah, let me reframe my question then, because what you
Okay.
said is completely true. I sometimes my mind jumps ahead. So
No worries.
if someone was looking for good content and balanced content or people, I guess the right question is, how do they find the right people to listen to, or at least to hear their opinions? Because what I was referencing is if you just go into the average
Yes.
Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok news feed, all super liberal, super biased, censoring any other opinion. So if someone was going to go on Twitter and try to find someone with a different opinion, a varying opinion, how would you recommend they look for them?
All right. So the way I go about this, especially when, I'm trying to form an opinion about a situation, and that usually happens a lot because, well, I'm also growing as a person, and that's completely natural, is I always try to go with an open mind. And that's the first step I do, whether it's going on Twitter or whether it is reading conversations, debates that have occurred in news articles or debates that are occurring on the social media platforms. Sometimes you have people in the comments who are voicing their opinions. So the first thing that I do when I am trying to form an opinion is that I try to stay neutral first. I try to keep myself in neutral ground and make sure that I am listening to both sides with an open mind. So then I do a little bit of research for one side. I find out their reasons. I find out why they are justifying their viewpoint. I find out, I try to understand it from their point of view. Basically, I try to empathize with what one side is feeling. Then I hop over to the other side, again, go over to what they're thinking, how they're feeling, whether it aligns with my thought process. And I think at that point, it is easier for me to make a decision on what I choose to believe, what I choose not to believe, what I choose to adhere to, and it also helps me to form an opinion about the situation. So going in neutral is a good way to start, and then making sure that you are not forming a bias because of the person who's speaking or because of the topic itself is a really good starting point.
I think that's great, excellent advice. You're taking kind of a debate approach. A lot of times when you debate somebody, you take the opposite, the opposing opinion, research it so you can understand it, and then you can not only decide, is this the direction you want to go against, but you could dissect it. So yeah, that's super wise and fair and balanced. So if more people did that, we'd have a better world. I think all the time, I don't care if it's India, America, Ireland, Australia, if you took the politicians' names and faces off the ballots and you just put a list of what they stand for, most people wouldn't be voting the same. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that you said, try to take away the bias and step aside and not be biased just based on the influencer. So, okay, well, let's pick back up with Prit. So Prit is in Singapore. She loves it, but there's bias. Then she comes back to India. They got the caste system, and there's more bias. Where do you go from there?
Okay, so basically that started my whole journey of learning how to be confident. I have always been pretty confident in my abilities, in who I am from when I was a kid. But during all of this bias, like it was definitely a shock for me, because coming back here, I thought, okay, yes, I will be accepted because I'm now with the people of my color, because all said and done, I was feeling a little bit out of place in terms of, what people perceived to be beauty, what people perceived to be the norm and stuff like that. So I thought, okay, maybe coming to India, I will maybe fit in better. And that did not happen. So I think it was around this time that I learned the true meaning of being confident. And I'd like to share that with your audience. So for me, I don't think that confidence, like when I talk about confidence, I don't think that it only pertains to one aspect of my life. I think that I try to look at confidence as a whole. I try to bring in every single ability of mine and look at it as a complete spectrum of what I should be confident about. And the reason is that, especially during my teen years, when there were a lot of people around me who did not like the way I looked. So my confidence when it came to how I perceived how I looked was a little bit lower than what it should have been. And I'm completely honest about that. However, there were a lot of abilities that I was super, super confident about, like my dancing, my singing, what else? The way I speak, debating, essay writing, so many different things that I was super, super confident about. So I decided that if I looked at all of the things that make up who I am, then my percentage of what made me me, the things that I would feel good about was pretty high percentage. Because even if my confidence in beauty was like 20%, but my confidence in all of my other abilities was like 95 or close to 100, then my overall confidence was going to be a lot higher. And I started perceiving life that way. I started perceiving confidence that way. And that is exactly how I show up today as well. My confidence is not pertaining to one aspect of my life. I show up because of every single aspect of me that combines together to make me this confident. So that actually began my process of building my confidence and, making sure that I was always confident. I always showed up confident.
Now, going back to your childhood, what helped form this belief? Obviously, your experiences and what you encountered, but were your mom and dad supportive of you being confident, like forget the world, just be confident? Or were they traditionalists and they're like, no, you obey, you fall into line?
Oh, my parents have been super, super supportive in terms of, making sure that I have my own voice, I have my own opinion. They have always made sure that, they believe in me, they trust my thought process. They absolutely value who I am as a person. So in that way, my parents have been very supportive and in a lot of ways contributed to the way I thought about it. Because of course, at that point, at that age, I would come back home and, cry and say, well, somebody said this or somebody said that. And, at that point, my mom or my dad, both of them, they would always say, why are you caring about what other people think? What do you think? And then I would, ponder about that and then think about what I feel about myself. And I think that at that stage, I realized that if I just thought I was beautiful, if I just thought that I was good at something, then it was true to me and that was enough. So it was at this point, them asking this very question, that why are you caring about what they think? Just that one simple question was enough for me to realize that I needed to stop relying on other people's opinions and I needed to start forming my own and started believing in the opinions that I was having, because that was important. I did have opinions. There were times that I forgot to believe in them. And I think that that was a very important question. And it also, I think that my parents have been very, very open in terms of accepting different versions of my thought process, like, how to be more open to a different thought process instead of aligning to what the society had been following for a very long time. So in that way, I think that my parents are forward thinkers.
So where does this bring you now? You're back in India. You
Yes.
finish what we call, high school. Then do you go on to university? Was it set in your government that you had to do something or not do something? Where did that bring you at this point?
Okay, so basically in India, it's it's a very societal thing that you are either a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. And if you choose any other profession other than that, then you're probably not going to get the respect that you hope to achieve, regardless of the success that you may achieve in the future. And you're probably also just deemed a failure if you don't follow any of these three streams. It's a very, I guess I would say, it adds a lot of pressure, especially when you are when you are 18 and you're deciding what to do with your life. So I normally joke that Indians usually become engineers or doctors, or they do their engineering degree and then they figure their life out. And it's not just me, but a lot of people that I've met, we finish our engineering degree and then we decide what to do with our lives. And the same thing happened with me as well. I did my engineering, and halfway through my engineering, I just knew this was not for me. This was not something that I was passionate about. It was not something that I saw the next 40 years of my life. I felt so lost. I felt like I was being forced to do something that I did not want to do. And I don't know, I guess, David, for me, I believe that life, you need to be doing what you are passionate about. The money will always come in at some point, but you need to first be happy about what you're doing. You need to first have that passion in your life. And for me, I just kept looking all through engineering, and it was really scary because every other person had their life figured out. I mean, they loved doing whatever it was that the subjects were teaching them, and they absolutely were happy about how their career was going to be if they chose an engineering job, whereas I was not. And I completed my engineering degree feeling a little lost, feeling, okay, where do I go from here? And feeling a little behind in life as well, because everyone's got their life figured out. And here I am at the age of 22, 23, and I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I don't know if I will ever be successful because I'm starting so late. And it was around this time that I realized that I had an interest in business. So I decided to do my MBA straight out of engineering. I did not attend any job interviews. I did not even apply to them. I just knew that that was not what I wanted to do. I did not have a plan B. I was just like, okay, I have to apply to MBA colleges. And then I applied, and then, I got into a couple, and then I made my decision and I went forward to do my MBA at RIT. It's in upstate New York.
Very nice. Very nice. So you came to America, And that was this your
Yeah.
first time, or did you take survey trips? Did you take vacations, or was this your first time in America?
Oh, it's my first time.
First time. That's crazy. So what was that like?
Oh, it was insane. In a lot of ways, I think it was. So I had transitioned from Singapore to India. So transitioning to another country was something that I had done before, and I knew that there were, going to be a few cultural shocks. I knew that I would have to take some time to adjust. In terms of the way I think, in terms of the way I behave, in terms of the way I showed up as well. So I guess I wasn't thrown off as much as my other peers who had never transitioned between countries before. So in a way, I coped with that a lot better. But there were a few things, understanding how the university works, because it's a completely different education system, understanding how that works, understanding where I wanted my career to go. I think that New York holds such a special place to me because in a lot of ways, I think I found who I wanted to be, and the person that I am today is in relation to that. It started from that entire phase of when I was by myself. So, when you are out of your parents' home, it's a different feeling because now it's like, okay, every single decision is on me. I have to go to the grocery store and then I look around, my mom's not around to tell me which tomato to pick. It starts something so small. You don't know how to pick tomatoes, you don't know how to pick vegetables. Then it goes on to the bigger things, how to, create the space that you're living in, how to form the opinions that you want to have and not opinions that probably have been what you have been accustomed to growing up, those kind of things. So it was very different experience. And I think that by living by myself, it helped me understand who I was as a person. It helped me form opinions. It helped me understand the path that I wanted to take in life.
So then let's pick up there. You're at
Yes.
RTI, and that's Rochester Technical Institute, correct?
Yes, RIT.
RIT,
Ro-
Institute of
Rochester
Technology.
Institute. Yes.
I told you before the call, I'm dyslexic. If our listeners don't know that after 94 or 90, whatever episodes, I'm dyslexic. So stuff like that really messes with my head. All right.
No, it's okay.
RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. And then the mechanical engineering degree you got, was it electrical? Was it mechanical? What type of engineering degree?
Engineering was electronics and communication.
Electronics communications. And then the MBA, they accepted you in the program just to continue so you can be more of a C-level executive. Okay. All right. So where does life go from there? So now you're working, you're getting an MBA. Did you find your passion in the MBA or somewhere else?
Yes, that's a story in itself. So first off, let me just rewind a little bit to my engineering days. So I was sitting around, this was, I think, second year summer holidays, like right after the second year of engineering. And I'm sitting around and like every Indian parent, okay, my dad saw me and he's like, well, you should not be sitting around. You should go do some work and, try to get some real life experience. So he, brought me onto his company and I interned there and helped them with their website and their social media. And I absolutely enjoyed every second of it. Like it was something that I could spend 6 hours a day and I would be so happy. I would still feel so energized by the end of the day. And I couldn't even focus that long when it came to my engineering degree or studying for exams. And I realized that, it was something that was some passion that I really wanted to feel. But at that point, I didn't realize that it was something that I could base my career on. Like I said, David, there was a lot of societal pressure. Nobody really considers at that point, of course, at that point in time, anything other than an engineering degree or a doctorate or, a lawyer's degree, I guess, people would not look at you the same way. People would not look at you with respect and they would guarantee that you were a failure. So at that point, I didn't even think that that could be a career path for me. So I went back for the next 2 years to intern with my dad's company, and I absolutely loved it. I helped them with their social media pages. I helped them with their website, and I realized that I sort of had a knack for it. Like I said, I didn't realize that I could base my career on that. So fast forward to my MBA program, I'm sitting in the first class of marketing. I can really even picture what I'm wearing. And the teacher is standing right there in front. And it's like such a pivotal moment in my life that I can't even I get goosebumps talking about it. So the teacher is there. She's asking questions about marketing, just to kind of gauge the level of the class, to figure out where we are at so that she has a good starting point to her teaching. And there I am answering every single question. And it's not simple questions. It's like, okay, marketing campaigns that happened 10 years ago, and I knew about it. I had, I don't know, subconsciously kind of grasped all of this all throughout the years, read articles about it. Like subconsciously, these were things that I was interested in. I just didn't know it was called marketing. And it was in that class, like I'm answering Coca-Cola's marketing campaign from 10 years ago, and I'm explaining it in so much detail that I shocked myself. Like, how is it that I'm remembering something from 10 years ago? And, the teacher was amazed. And then there was another campaign that I was talking about Maggie. It's another company. And I was talking about their marketing campaign. And it was in that moment that I realized that my entire life had led to this moment. And it was such a beautiful feeling for me, and to recognize that there is something that I was passionate about, and that there was something that I could base my career from. And in that moment, I think I made a promise to myself that whatever it is, I'm going to follow this passion through, because I spent so many years feeling so lost, feeling so scared that I would never find my passion, that after finding it, I never wanted to take it for granted. And thus began, my entire attempt of honing my skills in marketing, because even though you have passion for something, it doesn't stop there. You have to keep working at it. And given that I did not have any technical knowledge about marketing, like whatever I had read was just from articles and, just casual things that I had picked up on over the years. It was not technical knowledge. So not just that, I didn't have any previous business technical knowledge as well. So I had to work like 3 times harder, 4 times harder to make sure that I was on par, or even, got that A's in my class. So I think that started my entire journey. I think that if I were to pinpoint a moment in my life that I started to understand why I am the way I am, and how every aspect of my life converged into that one point, I think it was that moment.
That's awesome. So we've talked about learning to be confident. We've talked about, forming your own opinions.
Yes.
And now we're talking about finding your passion and making a career out of it.
Yes.
So now you found your passion, Prit. Take us from there of how you've made a career out of it, and we'll break things down from there.
Okay, perfect. So that's actually the start of my journey, and it's a really nice story because it's got everything. It's got drama, it's got pain, it's got happiness. So I'm excited to share that with your audience. So after my MBA, I got a great job at a top solar firm in New York, and I was so happy there. I had a great mentor. She was the marketing manager at the company. She really made sure that, there was a delicate balance between her teaching me as well as letting me do my own thing so that I could grow on my own. So in a lot of ways, I had an amazing life. I moved to Long Island, amazing life, amazing colleagues, amazing friends. Everything was just perfect in my life. I was at a job that I loved, and things had never been better for me. And then I was on a student visa, because after your MBA program, you get about a year of student visa work time. And I had to convert that into a work visa to work there permanently. Unfortunately, my H-1B visa, that's the work visa, did not get processed, which meant that I actually had to come back to India. So my perfect life over there, everything just poof in seconds.
Now, just to clarify,
yes.
Did the US government not process it, or your employer?
No, my employer did send through, and it's a lottery basically.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you say it wasn't processed, you didn't get
Yes.
accepted. Okay.
Yes.
I thought you meant it physically. They just didn't do the paperwork. And I was like, oh,
No, 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 no. No.
okay.
So, yeah.
That's my
My
ignorance.
employer was amazing. No, no,
Our listeners probably understood that, but I got confused. So I apologize.
Oh no, my employer was amazing. Like throughout, they even hired a lawyer to get me through the process. What else? They, even when the visa was not processed, they wanted to help me with other legal options, but it was too late at that point. So they were amazing throughout the entire thing, and they really wanted me to stay. So at that moment, oh my God, David, I was crushed, like beyond crushed. I think that it was the second time in my life where I had felt so scared. I didn't know what was going to happen the next day. And I think that I was filled with anxiety attacks because I just did not know where my life was going to go from here. Like I said, I'd kind of beaten all the odds to take up a career in marketing, and then to start over from scratch in another country was heartbreaking for me because I found my niche, I found my journey, but then that was just taken away from me in split seconds. So it was around this time that I realized I was at the bottom. I had to start from scratch. I'd just done the whole resume thing, sending it out on LinkedIn, going through many, 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 many interviews, heartbreaking interviews, getting dejected after every interview. And it was just like going through that entire process again. It just drained me completely because it is a pretty intense process. So I said, okay, I have two options at this point. One, I'm starting from scratch. So the first option is I send out my resumes on LinkedIn, start the process all over again, and just brave through it. My second option was to start something on my own. I was planning to do it like 5 to 10 years down the line, but I thought that maybe this entire situation had a purpose to it. I am a bit spiritual, so I thought that maybe this was meant to happen this way. I think that being a little bit more spiritual helped me accept and make peace with the situation, though of course that took time. So I thought that I guess it wouldn't be any harm if I tried a new path. And I thought that maybe somewhere down the line, I would at least thank myself for trying something new when I had the chance to. I was at the bottom, like zero, absolute zero. And maybe I was meant to go there because I was meant to do something else and not, at a full-time job or not go through the normal route. So I started to believe that I had a purpose. I started to believe that, okay, I was meant to do something different. And that's when I started looking at my option of starting something on my own. It was really painful. And of course, we can delve a lot deeper into the actual steps that I took to get out of that dark place. But so I started off by looking at how other people had started with their journey, starting on their own. And then like when I was starting my business and figuring out my own marketing, I realized that there was a huge disconnect between marketing for your business and the marketing that you actually at your school or from case studies and stuff like that. There's a lot of gap over there, and not that the curriculum was bad or anything. It's just that the world of marketing changes so much, especially social media marketing, that you have to keep up with it. And it's different to practically apply it. So in that time of freelancing and trying to start my own business, I realized that if I, having technical knowledge in marketing, was struggling so much, then other business owners who don't have any background in marketing must be struggling so much more. And the resources that I was looking or finding online were just either they were too expensive or they were just, the cookie cutter solutions that were not specific to the businesses, like small businesses or solopreneurs. So that's when I actually found my true purpose in life. And that was to help small businesses across the world to feel confident about their marketing. And that's when I started my podcast. I started my YouTube channel to give free tips for business owners, for solopreneurs, and for startups as well. So from that, I think, started my entire journey where I set up my business with the brand mission of helping small businesses. So that was my purpose. And I got to, pursue my passion for marketing. At the same time, I was helping people, I was making a difference. And I don't know, it just makes me so happy that something so beautiful came out of a very dark place in my life.
Yeah. So let's talk about three things. We're going to talk
Yes.
about number one, the disconnect between higher education and reality. Because what you're
Yes.
saying is you can go to the best school in the world, and not only do things change fast, but they teach you in a theoretical environment.
Yes.
When in business, you have little time, little
Yes.
resource. Typically, you have
Yes.
little time, little resources. You need big results. So there's
Yes,
a
absolutely.
huge difference between those two.
Yes.
So number two is, what did you see that were the practical steps to overcome that gap? So we're gonna just, we already kind of cover number one. It's like, we know there's a gap. So what were the practical steps that you took and you'd advise a company now, okay, your marketing, we have to get real results today. So what are things that small business owners should be looking for that they're not being taught in school?
All right. So first off, sort of answering your first question, there is going to be a disconnect. It's not like you said, it's not about how great the school is, because even though there was an actual process, like I think it was my capstone project where I had to do a marketing plan for an actual company. Even though that does help me, like I do not regret my MBA degree. I know that it has helped me in a lot of ways, but at the same time, when you are actually starting out on your own, yes, your budget, your monetary limitations, your resource limitations, the access to resources, all of those play a huge, huge part in your journey. So I think that the first practical step is to assess where you are at, and not just where you are at, assess your limitations, assess what you can access to, assess what you do not have access to, and acknowledge your limitations, regardless of what they may be. For me, it could be age, it could be the location I'm in, it could be societal pressures. So many different aspects contribute to each one's journey, and that's a more practical approach. And I think understanding one's resources, understanding one's limitation is usually a good starting point to help business owners start with the practical approach of growing their business. So that's one step, yes.
Yeah. So now then, once they get a realistic look at where they're at, their strengths,
Yes.
their weaknesses, what's that next step? You have everybody in the world promising them results,
Yes.
and very few come
Yes.
through, right? And then
Yes.
what's really sad and frustrating is the company that charges $5,000 for a project and the company that charges $25,000 for the project, both are bringing the same crappy results to most businesses. And that's super hard for me to watch because I'm also into marketing. So do
Yes.
you experience that in your business? Like, it really doesn't matter what you're paying. It comes down to the human that's doing it.
I think that answering your question, I think one thing that I tell my clients is, you're going to have tons of case studies around you. Okay. There are going to be so many people that to look up to and to understand their journey, but you are your biggest case study. Okay. What applies to them may not apply to you. I really have seen so many businesses making this mistake. And I too did it when I first started. I'm not going to, lie that I was different. I too did it. There were so many things that I made, and we can talk about that as well. Looking at what worked for another business, I thought, okay, if I apply that to my business, it's going to work. However, what we don't realize is they were working to their strengths. They were working to their resources available. They were working to their factors, whereas those may or may not resonate with where your business is at. What are your external factors? What are your limitations? So I think that when it comes to setting up your business, keeping a business journal really, really helps. Understanding why you are making the decisions that you're making in that given point in time can really help you in the future to look back and say, okay, well, these were the external factors at that point in time. This is why I made that decision. And that can really help you in the future when you are making more decisions. So this is one thing that I hugely recommend, is to keep a business journal. Make sure it follows you around. Every single thought process that you have, write it down, because you are your biggest case study. As much as you would love to learn from someone else's journey, and you can, there's so many things that you can learn, but not all of it you can apply to your situation. And I think as business owners, we are blessed with really good intuition. I think it's just inherently part of our thought process and the way we are. So I think that using your intuition to decipher what is right for you and what is not right for you is a good way, and honing that intuition, because that's a skill as well. You need to be able to tap into that. That's also another good way. And another step, I guess I would say, is giving yourself a trial period when you are implementing strategies that you see outside. Because like I said, there's going to be a lot of factors that are determining where you are today. So even if you do want to take a strategy from somewhere else, give it a trial period. Not just that, be open to making tweaks to it so that it actually fits to your limitations, your resources, your factors. So that's another huge thing that I have incorporated for my business as well.
So when you went and you started your company and you're learning what works for you, what works for clients,
Yes.
not always the same. Fundamentals of business are the same. Fundamentals of life, how God made it. If it's truth and it works, it's from God, right? But what
Yes.
you're finding out is, like you just listed a dozen things.
Yes.
Your goal, what you're trying to accomplish, changes your marketing plan. Your resources change your marketing plan. So many things change your marketing plan. So now as you're developing your business, you're juggling client businesses. Talk about that part of your life and what it was like.
Yeah, so that is pretty interesting, because as a business owner, you know, when I was a marketer, when I was freelancing and I was doing a little bit of consulting work, though I was more focused on management when I was freelancing, I hadn't started my company yet at that point. I freelanced for a year. I think that the advice that I was giving was more from a marketer's standpoint. But when I became a business owner, I started understanding the fundamental struggles of a business owner. And my advice, even though it was from the same marketing standpoint, I think that I was more acutely aware of like the budget, the monetary limitations, the resource limitations that they might have. And, you know, even with their skills and their own thought process, I think I was more acutely aware. And that factors in with each client. Like each client is very different, you know, in terms of the way they think, in terms of their strengths, in terms of their weaknesses. And I think that understanding that has been a huge part of my job as a consultant as well. So I really like it in the sense that it's very different. I mean, it's why I chose marketing in the first place. I love the fact that every day of my life is different. I love that it's just such a unique perspective to life. So I think that by looking at each of my clients, I take them as a whole, and it just is a new way of how I can build myself up as a marketer as well, because each experience teaches me something new every time.
And where does that bring you now? So at that age where you launched your own company, how old were you then?
27.
27. And then, so bring us from there to today. I don't want to miss anything in your story that you feel is important or anything that you want to share with the audience. So between launching that company and today, what was Prit's journey?
All right, so I think that first I need to talk about the transition from going from a dark place to actually having hope in life. And I think that that was a huge part of my journey. And one of the basics of any entrepreneurial journey is that the entrepreneurial journey is fundamentally about you. It's not about your company. It's not about your customers. It is about you. Your business is always going to be as strong as how much you know yourself. And I think I quickly realized that when I started my journey. So when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I was freelancing and I just wanted to see if it was going to work out for a year. I didn't want to think too long term because I had planned my entire life out and all of that vanished in just a second. So I was afraid to plan my life out again. So all I wanted to do was just to look at the next day, see if it was working out, and then keep going forward. And within, I think, 3 or 4 months, it was pretty clear that this was going to work out long term for me. And this is something that I was happy doing. So I think that when you are dealing with something unexpected, taking each day at a time is a good place to start. Okay, understanding where you are at and taking steps from where you are at instead of where you thought you would be was a huge learning curve for me, because I thought I was going to be somewhere else, and accepting that I was not there and I was someplace else was a huge process. And during this process, journaling really helped me, just analyzing my thoughts, writing my thoughts down, figuring out what exactly my thought process was and how to overcome feeling low, feeling down, feeling dejected, losing hope in life. So that was where my journey started. So within 3 months of this freelancing journey, it was pretty clear that at some point I would have to set up my business because I was gaining some sort of traction.
And let's talk about that for a minute. Before,
yes.
when I was going 1, 2, 3, and I stopped at 2,
Yeah.
The third thing was talk about how did you emerge from the darkness?
Okay,
how did
yes,
you
let's talk about
overcome that depression? And you just said one great step. So if people listening now and they just want a starting point to get out of the funk or the depression, said journal. And I agree with that completely. Journaling is a massive, there's different ways to journal, but describe how you did it and then talk about other things that help Prit out of the darkness.
Perfect. Okay, so journaling, okay, I'll give you a really good starting point. So a few of the questions that I personally ask myself, because I know that a lot of, I'm a writer. I've been writing ever since I was a kid. So for me, it's easy to write. It's easy to write my emotions. But from what I have realized is not everybody knows where to start when it comes to journaling. They don't know what to write, or they're not sure where to start. So I'll give you a few questions. Answering those questions is really a good starting point for your journaling. And then over time, when you start getting familiar with these questions, automatically you will get into the flow of writing, is what I have observed with my friends and also with my clients as well. This is something that I recommend just because it helps you cope better with the journey of being a business owner and the stress and the anxiety that comes along with it. Okay, so the first question that I ask myself is, what am I feeling now? And one thing that I recognize when I'm writing is I do not judge myself. I am extremely kind to myself, regardless of how bad the thought is, regardless of how insignificant, or even if it's the worst thought in my mind. Whatever it is, when I'm writing in my journal, I do not judge myself. And that's something that, you as a listener should also keep in mind, because this is a point where you have to be patient with yourself. You have to be kind to yourself. So the first question I start is, what exactly am I feeling now? And it starts from anything and everything. If I'm feeling frustrated or if I'm feeling angry, I write it down. The second question that I ask myself is, why am I feeling that way? What exactly was a trigger moment that made me feel that way? Or was there an incident that made me feel that way? I describe the incident in detail, as much detail as I can possibly go into. The next step is, where do I want to be? Okay, what do I want to be feeling? So that is basically wherever you are right now is point A. Where do you want to be would be your point B. And that was a huge step that I personally took when I first started, because I was in a real bad place. I had a lot of anxiety attacks. I was crying all the time. I was breaking down at every second. And it was just, I did not want to talk to people. I was always in my room. It was not a good thing at all. I was very pessimistic about life. And for those of you who probably might not know me personally, I know, but I'm just a very positive and optimistic person. I have a lot of energy. And for me to be that version was scary. It was really scary for me personally, because I was like, okay, who's this person?
And how long did that season last?
It was, I think, a good 6 months before I could actually start to feel myself getting back to normal.
Yeah. And what you're talking about now is really important, because some of our listeners myself included, struggle with depression, and they've felt it for 6 years, maybe 6 days, maybe 6 months. But no matter how long you're in that place, it sucks and it's bad. And listen to what Prit's saying and let's get out of it together. So Prit, keep going. You're talking about journaling. You're talking about how to journal. What else helped you to break free?
Yeah, so in journaling, understanding where you want to be, where do I want to be was the next step. And then my fourth question was, how do I get there? What are actionable steps that I can take to get there? And for me, at this point, I wanted to be a successful entrepreneur, even though I probably did not want to look too far ahead. I just wanted to make enough to sustain my daily expenses and my business expenses. So I started looking at other entrepreneurs who had made their mark in the world, and I tried to analyze how they became the person that they were to achieve so much. Like, for example, Sarah Blakely, she is the CEO of Spanx. And, the kind of person that she is, she's so lively, she's so upbeat, and she was so determined when she first started. Her journey is incredible. So understanding those key characteristics of the people that you admire, I started putting it down on paper. I created this mind map of the person that I envisioned myself to be, determined, passionate, hopeful, optimistic. All of these words were put into paper, on my paper, in my journaling book. And once I started, kind of unwinding all the thoughts that were running in my mind and putting them on paper, it became more clear. And I started step by step. I didn't jump directly. So if I wanted to be consistent, if I wanted to show up consistently, that was one of the traits that I wanted to be. Then I started small, maybe one YouTube video a week, focusing on just one YouTube video a week, and then showing up on my stories maybe 3 times a week, trying to be consistent through small steps. And then slowly I moved on to bigger steps, showing more consistently in terms of maybe creating products for my Etsy page on a regular basis, and so on and so forth. So that was one method. Journaling really helped me. And those were 4 questions that gave me a good start. Even when you're journaling on a normal everyday basis, just asking yourself, what are you feeling? What was the incident that triggered it? And how do you want to feel is a good starting point. The second thing was meditation. And so it's a really funny thing because I was introduced to meditation when I was a kid. I think this was in 3rd or 4th grade, if I'm not wrong, or maybe, around that time. And we had yoga as like a compulsory class. And during that, they taught meditation. And basically, meditation when you're a kid is trying to get you to sit still for at least 5 minutes. And I hated absolutely every second of it. I thought, to be honest, that meditation was absolute crap because I thought that, there's so many thoughts running in my head all the time. How do I keep it silent? How do I shut it off? It's just not possible for me. I don't think it works for me, and all of those things. So that was my mindset before this entire H-1B fiasco happened. And when I was in such a dark place, I was looking for something, just anything to get me out of that. I was ready to try anything again. And for me, again, I started listening to people who said, really successful entrepreneurs who said that meditation really helped them. And I said, okay, well, maybe there's something here that I need to take a look. And, I was desperate because I was in such a bad place and my thoughts were beginning to scare me at some point. And I knew that I had to somehow get out of that. So I started with simple meditation, the ones that have guided meditations on YouTube. I started with those because if it's just music, I still couldn't stop my thoughts from racing. I still couldn't, control what I was feeling and all of those things. So I started very small. I started with guided meditations. Jason Stephenson on YouTube is a good place to go in case you guys want some good meditation music. It's just amazing. So he has guided as well as just normal music, just as a side note. So I started with guided, and then it was like for 10 minutes a day. And then slowly I increased it to 15 minutes a day, and then 30 minutes a day. At first, I didn't see any difference, to be very honest with you, but I just kept going. And after 3 or 4 days, I realized that after my meditation and when I fell asleep, the next morning, I was feeling a little bit lighter, just a little bit. But it was enough for me to believe that something was happening, that there was a fundamental change in the way I was beginning to see my life.
And
So
just to
then I,
clarify, when you say a little bit lighter, for those of us who experience
yes,
depression and anxiety, we know
yes,
what you mean. But for those of
yes,
you who aren't connecting the dots, she didn't feel physically like I lost 3 pounds.
yes,
She
yes,
felt like a burden relieved or emotional
yes.
freedom, something that she could breathe easier without as much stress. Is that how you describe it?
Yes, I would. And then, when you have anxiety, your heart feels heavy. It's just, there's a lot of pressure. You're in constant like focus and, your thoughts are racing. So when I say I feel a little bit lighter, if someone is talking at speed 10, suddenly it's at speed 8,
Mhm.
and then the more I did meditation, slowly the thoughts in my head were becoming a little bit normal. They were getting back to the normal speed instead of just everything running all over the place and me feeling out of control. So in a lot, and yes, even the emotional weight, what they call the burden of what I was going through, the sadness in my heart, all of that, bit by bit, it was very, very gradual. This, like I said, it took 6 months for me to start feeling a little bit like myself. But the day-to-day difference was noticeable. I could feel it when I woke up in the morning. I was no longer feeling like starting the day with dread or pessimism and just not wanting to do whatever. Even getting out of bed at one point was such a horrible task for me, and I couldn't even do it when I was in the transition of moving back to India. So yeah, that was what I mean when I said I started to feel a little bit lighter. I started to look forward to the day in little ways, very, very little ways, but certain ways. Yes.
Yeah, and I love how you describe the anxiety you feel in your chest, because I've noticed that I feel depression in my head, but
Yes.
anxiety you do feel in your chest. So that's pretty
Yes.
interesting.
Yes, it is true.
Yeah.
So
So go from there. So now where do we go from here?
all right, so meditation really, really helped me. Keeping a business journal as well really helped me. Journaling on a personal note really helped me. And I think the process of me feeling like myself was more to do with me making peace with my situation, me accepting that, all right, this is where I'm at right now. The dream life that I thought I would have, it has to change. I can't keep holding on to that dream anymore. I really need to start figuring out what my life is going to be from where I am at right now. And I think recalibrating that was a process. It was really a huge process because a huge part of you doesn't want to accept where you are at. It doesn't want to accept the reality of the situation. And because once you accept the reality of the situation, it becomes that much more harder to deal with it. So I think accepting my reality and finding steps for me to take from that new point of reality took some time, and that was the next step for me.
Wonderful. So where you even mentioned, we'll put a link in the show notes to the meditation that you recommended, that at least you started. You said Jason Stephenson, correct?
Yes.
All right. So now you're learning to journal, you're learning to meditate, you're learning to get rid of the anxiety, you're slowing your mind down, becoming more focused. So what's happening in your life and your business at this point? You're feeling lighter each day.
I'm feeling lighter each day. I'm showing up more authentically on my social media platforms. I'm starting to, like I said, when I first started the entrepreneurial journey, I did not have a purpose. I did not know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to make money, and it was just another way for me to do something different and give myself a chance to prove myself in some sort of way. But then, like I said, as I started to implement marketing strategies for my own self, my freelancing journey, I realized there was such a disconnect. And that's when I found my purpose. So it was not until like a good 3 or 6 months, I wouldn't say 6 months, but a good 3 months after I started my journey, that I found my purpose. So once I found my purpose, it became easier for me to wake up the next day. I definitely feel that it contributed to that, because now I was making a difference to the people around me. I was doing something solid and helping people in a different way, instead of earning money for myself, finding ways to fund myself, finding ways to pay for my next vacation. And I think that having a purpose, having a higher purpose when you are a business owner or when you're starting your entrepreneurial journey is really, really, really important, because that is what is going to get you up the next day. I mean, on this journey, it's hard. It's really, really hard. There are so many days where you're going to be questioning yourself. You're going to be asking yourself, like, why am I even doing this? And you need to have an answer to yourself. And that answer cannot be, oh, well, I want to pay for my vacation, or I want to do this. It can't be about you, because you can always do that at a full-time job. You can always do something else that is, doesn't make you question so many ways. And when you have a higher purpose, it just helps you make peace with your situation, like the struggles you're facing with your business, or the stagnance that you sometimes feel with your business, the losses, the failures that you are going to encounter more times than you can count. And having a higher purpose really helped me get my feet back on the ground. And from that point, every single decision that I have made for my business was not about me, was about how I can better help people. I started my YouTube channel with that purpose in mind. I started my podcast with that business in mind. My packages for my consulting firm are structured in a way that aligns with my purpose, like my Etsy shop, all of the products, every single thing, whatever I do, showing up on Instagram, whatever the topics I talk about on my YouTube channel, everything is aligned to my higher purpose. And in a lot of ways, I know this is like going a little bit spiritual, but I think that this was what I was always meant to do. Like the lessons that I learned growing up about confidence, about my perception, the struggles that I have faced even while I was growing up, all of that in some way have contributed to where I am today. It adds somehow, even my time in Singapore, my time in India, the feelings of lost and, all that, confusion about my career, everything kind of tied back and aligns to where I am today. It makes sense today why I had to go through all of those to get to where I am today. In a lot of ways, all the lessons that I've learned in my life kind of, culminated into me becoming a business owner. And in a lot of ways, that's very beautiful for me to see. Like when I was going through all of those rough phases, I was like, okay, why am I being put through this? This makes no sense. And why am I the only one dealing with so many hard things in life? Because my life has not been easy. As much as I would love to say that it has been easy, there have been a lot of external circumstances that have made it hard for me to, I was very unhappy for a very long time in my life, to be honest. And, understanding that there was a reason why I had to go through all of that. And it makes me believe that whatever, struggles that I might be going through at this point in my life, and of course, every one of us are going through something or the other, there is a higher purpose to that, and it will make sense someday. It will all come together someday. So even understanding that also helped me. So that's how I started. So if you are a business owner or an entrepreneur, have a higher purpose, all right? It's not about you. It has to be something that you are dedicated to doing, to making a difference to the people around you, because that is what will keep you going. And this journey is going to make you give up so many times, so many times. But if you really want to keep going at it, if you really want to have that determination and that strength, that courage to keep going, definitely find a higher purpose. Find a reason that gets you up in the morning, and align your business strategies to match that purpose. Money will come in. Money will come in, and that's just how it is. But if you run after money, then there's a chance that, it will backfire. But if you run after your higher purpose, everything will align, everything will fit. It will just make sense. I know that's really spiritual, but that's what I truly feel. And I'm proof of it.
Oh, 100%. And our listeners know we have I have a biblical worldview, but we have listeners from all over the world with different worldviews. But they see show after show that our guests like you, when they're referring to God, spiritual, however you're considering it, the greater power, there's truth. It's like guest after guest after guest. It's like, wow, what they're saying lines up with the Bible. What the Bible says is coming true in real life. Maybe God's real, and maybe God does love me, and maybe he's there for me. And that's why this whole show is about helping each other grow as iron sharpeneth iron, so the man, the countenance of his friend, just helping each other grow so we can love and glorify each other, and or love and glorify God and help each other. So no, don't be ashamed at all. You be you. That's it.
Yes.
But now let's ask this question, Prit. Between your birth and where you are today, is there anything we missed or significant before we get into where's Prit today and where's she going? So hopefully we can help you get there.
Like I said, I think that I was unhappy for a very, very long time in my life. I kept blaming external circumstances. I kept blaming, people around me in my life for contributing to my unhappiness. And I think that a huge lesson that I learned during my entrepreneurial journey, especially because I had to actually pull myself out of the dark place. Happiness is a choice that I have to make. It is onto me. I can't depend on external circumstances or external factors or people around me to make me happy. It has to come from within me. And like I mentioned in this podcast episode, that the entrepreneurial journey is fundamentally going to be as strong as how you know yourself. And through this journey, there have been so many things that I have learned about myself. Like, for example, that happiness is a choice that I have to make for myself, and that no one is responsible for my happiness. That was a huge lesson. It was also about me understanding my strengths, my weaknesses, how to hone in on my strengths and how to work around my weaknesses. So many different things have contributed to my success, even in my personal life. And I have to attribute that to my entrepreneurial journey. It's because of the deep introspection that I do in my entrepreneurial journey that has really helped me show up better in terms of personal relationships, in terms of my own personal life, and for my business as well. So if there's anything that I want to add, it is that your happiness is your choice. It's easy. It's so easy to blame, my H1B or the people around me or the friends, the so-called friends in quotes who kept putting me down, or, so many different people in my life who have let me down. It's so easy to blame them. But at the end of the day, it was my choice whether I chose to stick myself in those situations or be around those people. At any given point, I could have walked away. It was my choice to make, but I did not make that choice. And, when you start to take responsibility for your actions, when you start to take responsibility for your happiness, it changes the way you perceive how happy you should be, because you realize that, hey, this is on me. It's not on someone else. It's not on something else. It's on me. I get to make this choice and I get to be happy. And I think that was one more thought process that helped me get out of the dark place.
Well said. Very important. I think you're right. That's one of the keys. Taking that personal responsibility, not blaming anybody, and just bringing it back to what can I control and do. So thank you, Prit. So let's do this. At this point, where is Prit today and where are you headed?
Oh, so many different places to go. And yeah, so basically where I'm at right now, my business is doing well. We have, in the last 3 years, I've worked with 60 clients from over 8 countries. And, this part of the journey for my business is all about leaving a legacy. So it's more about, at some point I'm going to be publishing a book this year, and it's going to be about my entrepreneurial journey as well. And then it's more about expanding my business. So that's where I'm at. Up until now, for the last 3 years, it's been trying to stabilize and bring it to a point where I can be consistent with my income and all of those things. So the next 5 years is, and yeah, I think you can make out that now I'm open to planning for 5 years. At some point I wasn't. I was so scared to plan for the next day. But now, I've reached a point where I'm comfortable enough to plan. I'm secure enough to plan for the next 5 years. Expanding my business is the next way to go, and helping more and more and more businesses in as many ways as I can is definitely one of my primary goals. And of course, leading a life where I'm passionate, where I am happy and, just content with what I'm doing is also one of my primary objectives.
That's awesome. And one thing I love what you said is you said you've helped 60 clients in the last 3 years. That's real. That's great. Because
Yes.
if you're listening now, I'm a marketing and sales consultant, and I've been working in business my whole career. And when I see these people who are consultants say, I've worked with thousands of companies, people, if you're listening to this, that's impossible.
Yes.
It's impossible. If you worked with thousands of companies, that means you've maybe sent them emails and they've rejected you, or you're doing a terrible job. Because if you're like Prit and you're doing quality work, you're keeping your customers, and you can only manage so many. Now you can build a team, but the fact is, if you're building a team, even just look at every human has 24 hours a day. We have 7 days a week for roughly 365 days a year, because sometimes there's leap year. We all need 8 hours of sleep, roughly, some 5, some 12. But I love how you were honest about that, Prit. So if that doesn't sound like a lot to you, in marketing consulting, that's a lot, people. And for people who are business owners listening to this podcast, Prit's information is going to be in the show notes. Reach out to her if you have a question, if you want to learn more. But it should be a red flag. If you're looking at a marketing consultant and like, I helped 300 clients this year, prove it. I've never met one that can do that. I mean, even if you don't sleep, there's not enough hours in the day. So thank you, Prit, for being refreshingly honest.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I personally, for me, because I know the struggle of every single client that I have brought on. So for me personally, when I look at it, I always say that 60 plus clients for me is a success. And I think that's one more lesson that I learned is I get to define my success. Like you said, David, somebody might say, oh, well, 3,000 clients is probably an awesome thing to do for 3 years. But for me, I know every single client that I have brought on. I know the amount of effort and hard work that I have put in to get even one client on, let alone 60. So for me, it's a huge success. So even when I say it, I mean, I get to define that this is my success. So that's one more lesson as well. So yes, I'm going to stop now, guys. But yes, if you are interested to know more about me, definitely do check out the links that David will be putting in his description. I'm quite a friendly person. I would love to say hi.
Yeah. And then what's the best way, even though there'll be links, some people are running, some people are driving, but they're going to remember, what's the best way to get a hold of you? And you can give an email address, you can give a website, you can give a special offer, whatever you want.
Oh, you can definitely catch me on Instagram. I usually am available in my DMs on Instagram. It's at The Marketing Nomad, which is my pseudonym online. And yeah, you can visit my website as well, www.themarketingnomad.co. You can email me at prit@themarketingnomad.co as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being on the show today, Prit. You truly are a remarkable woman, and thank you for sharing and being so transparent about the good, the bad, the ugly, and just the struggles and the achievements you've had in your life. It's so wonderful to see. I hope we continue the friendship and the relationship. Before we tie up this episode, I asked it before, I'm asking it, is there anything we missed from your birth to today that you want to cover, or any final thoughts for our audience?
Well, final thoughts I definitely do have. And that is, if you are passionate about something, not many people get to experience that in this life. And if you have found something that you are really, really passionate about, I really think that you owe it to yourself to see it through, to, put in all your efforts. It doesn't matter if it is a success or a failure. The fact that you found something that you're passionate about and you're giving it your all itself should be a huge success for you. And not many people are lucky enough to find something, that they're passionate about. I know that I have seen so many people who've lived their entire lives without feeling 1 ounce of passion for what they do. So if you're lucky enough to find it, I think that, I really urge you, this is my mission, I guess, in life, is to urge as many people as possible to follow your passion, regardless of what the society might dictate you should be or how you should be, or your own fears as well. Learn to overcome that and follow your passion.
Great words of advice. Prit, I thank you very much for being on the show today. So if you have any questions for Prit, if you have any questions for myself, reach out to us. But remember, like our slogan says for the podcast, like Prit just told you, don't just listen to great content, but do it. Repeat it each day so you can have a great life in this world and moreover in eternity to come. So I'm David Pasqualone. This was Prithvi Madhukar, and we wish you well, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you guys for listening all the way up until here. David, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It has been such a pleasure and an absolute honor to join the rest of the people who've been on your podcast, the rest of the remarkable people who've been on your podcast. So it's really happy feeling for me. And I hope that your listeners, have gained some sort of insight into my life, as well as help my things have given them a good starting point to figure their life out as well. So thank you so much for that, for giving me that opportunity.
Oh, no, it's our pleasure. We all learn from each other. We all grow together. And it's been an honor to have you today here, Prit. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. To our listeners, we'll see you next week. But for everybody, if you're new especially, these shows are evergreen. It worked last year. It works today. It'll work next year because it's truth. So go back, find topics of the podcast you need to grow in those areas. Listen, apply it, do it, and then like us and review us on the podcast players and in YouTube and everything else. But reach out to Prit. She's great. She's got a lot of talent, and be her 61, 62, and 63 client so she can have real numbers and real people to help. All right. All right. We love you guys. Catch you later. Ciao.